Okay, the first thing we got to do is open up Pro Tools. Okay, we're going to create a new session from the dashboard. We're going to call this PA2 and your last name. My last name is Nader. And again, just, I'm going to leave this, I'm going to check the sample rate, make sure it's 48 kilohertz. Check the bit depth, make sure it's 24 bits. And I'm going to check the location where my session folder is going to be saved. Then I'm going to hit create. Okay, so what's new here is that we're going to add a click track to our session, and we do that from the same menu that we add an audio track or a instrument track. But instead of clicking new, like we've done for those two types, Pro Tools puts the click track way at the bottom here. Okay, so we hit create click track, and Pro Tools inserts it right into the session. Here's the edit window, control equals. Here's what it looks like in the mix window. Notice in the mix window, you see that there is a plugin inserted. Now this plugin is actually the click plugin. Okay, now that we have a click track inserted into our session, we want to change the tempo of our session to match the tempo that we have in mind for our piece. Pro Tools defaults to 120 beats per minute. I'm just going to change it to 100. Just click in there and type. So you can see I just changed the tempo to 100 beats per minute. We want to be consciously aware whether our count off is on or off. Okay, so when it is bright green here, highlighted bright green, then the count off is toggled on, or it's set to be enabled. When it's not bright green, the count off is not enabled. So we want it enabled, and we could change the number of bars that will click before Pro Tools starts recording, which is what the count off does. We could double click and say we want 2 bars or 3 bars or 4 bars, but 1 is just fine for right now. Okay, next we're going to add an instrument track to our session. Remember, an instrument track is actually a MIDI track, but it's a MIDI track that's ready to receive a virtual instrument. So we do that by clicking on the track menu, clicking on new. We get our new tracks dialog window. I'm going to leave this at mono. I only want to create one. I'm going to click on this menu, this drop down menu, and I'm going to choose instrument track. It changes over to ticks. We'll explain that later, and I'll leave this at instrument for now without changing the name to be more specific. Okay, so it inserted that instrument track. So now we have a click track and an instrument track. Here's my edit window, command equals. There's my mix window, and we can see both tracks are visible in a different way in both windows. Back to command equals, got my edit window view. Okay, next I'm going to insert a virtual instrument on this track. So I like to do that from the mix window. So command equals, I'm back at the mix window. Okay, now in my insert slots here, I'm just going to click on one, get this menu. I'm going to scroll over until I can get deeper into the plugin menu. Oops. Scroll down until I get instruments. And then I'm going to choose any of the instruments that I have available to me. At this point, I will just choose expand 2. Okay, so now expand 2 is a virtual instrument inserted into this instrument track. It has a default sound, that's already loaded, but I could change it to anything. So I'm going to change it to something else. I'm going to change it to hard lead. In my hard leads menu, I'm going to go to AC/DC tapping. Okay, we have a sound selected on our virtual instrument. Now we have to enable our instrument track by hitting this red button right here. It will flash. And, oh, this is on mute here. Unmute our click track. And I'm going to hit Command equal to go to my edit window. Oh, let me just close this virtual instrument. I don't need it. Just click that because you have to record enable the whole session. So now the track is record enabled, the session is record enabled. Presumably, if my MIDI controller is working, I should be able to hit something and hear some sound, and I do. This is good. So I'm ready to go. All right, I'm going to hit the play button, listen to that 1 bar count in, and then start recording. Okay, great. Let's listen back to this, and I'm going to return to 0 by hitting this return to 0 button in the transport. I might even just disable the metronome or mute the click track, one or the other. Maybe I'll do that. Mute the click track so when it plays back I don't have to hear the click. So here we go. Sounds like that worked. Okay, now I'm going to hit save because I just did something. Cool. Now what I want to do is bounce the audio that the virtual instrument has played based on the MIDI information that was sent to it from my MIDI controller. So to do that, I have to just consider a few things. I have to select the area in my timeline that's going to be bounced. So, I mean, I could just drag across the timeline, right? So that means that all of this is going to be bounced, and I only recorded this much, so I mean, I probably don't need that. So I could, instead just kind of go up to the top of the ruler and drag and select a smaller area. Another option is to click on a clip that is the length you want, or maybe select a few clips that actually encompass the length of what you want to bounce. So in this case, I could actually click on this MIDI clip by clicking on that, and then that's the only thing that's going to get bounced. Now, this is something we'll talk about much more in depth soon, but it also depends on what tool you're using. So one very useful tool is this thing called the Smart tool, which is it's like a bracket above these 3 very important tools, and if you select that bracket, you have the ability to use all 3 of them sort of at the same time without pushing anything. And which one you get to use just sort of depends on the placement of your cursor. So like if I'm toward the bottom of the clip, I get the hand grabber. If I'm in the middle of the clip, I get the selector tool. If I'm at the edge of the clip, I get the trim tool. And they each allow me to do different things. So in this case, I want to use the hand grabber tool, so I'll make sure it's like down toward the bottom so I can see the hand grabber, and then I click, and that selects that area. You can see it up here and down here kind of highlighted. Now when I go to the file menu to bounce, file menu, bounce mix, that will be the only area that is actually bounced. Okay, so now I'm here. Looks like I want to make sure I name this something. Okay, so that's fine, and bounce 1 or something like that. Okay, so now I can choose right here if I want this to be an MP3 or something else. Now, WAV is a full quality audio format. AIFF is a full quality audio format. MP3 is a compressed audio format. So these will be bigger files. MP3s are smaller files. In this case, we want to use MP3, but there's reasons why you would want to use, uncompressed versus compressed. Okay, so I'll leave these alone for now. I do want to make sure that my bounced audio here is going to my session folder in the bounce files areas. All right, so hit bounce. And then you're going to get this window that just gives you a few other things that you could choose between them. Okay. Does it? Played a little something. Okay, now let's see what we got. So this is good. I'll hit save one more time. I always like to hit save. And let's go to the session folder and make sure it's there. Okay, so here's that session folder on my computer. Yours might be somewhere else. I'm going to click in here and I'm going to go make sure that it's in my bounced files. Make sure that's there. It is. I'll double click it just to make sure it actually produced something. So I'm gonna, it's probably gonna open my Apple Music here. And it did. Success. Okay, close this Apple Music. All right, so we got this. We got it done here. We got an instrument track. We got some MIDI data recorded on it. Then the virtual instrument that we inserted on that instrument track, changed that MIDI data into some sound that we were able to bounce out of Pro Tools. We're not in Pro Tools here. We were able to bounce it out of Pro Tools to an MP3 file. So we did a good job. All right, until the next one, be good.